All right, welcome to the Fractional Practice Podcast. Today I'm joined by Beck. Great to have you here. For those listening, Beck, would you mind giving a very quick introduction?
My name's Rebecca Marlor. I'm based in Sydney. I've got experience working both in the US and Australia in fractional work across comms, marketing, and UX for businesses who are looking at streamlining their customers' experience for competitive advantage.
Awesome, that's good. How did you get started in this journey?
Initially, first was being on mat leave and a friend saying, "Hey, you've got some spare time. Would you consider doing some work for us?" And, I believe in saying yes. And that was a great opportunity to do something part-time. And that was more than 20 years ago. And
Wow.
it just kept rolling into project after project after project. So that child has now got his own career and law degree
Wow.
and doing things. And I'm still doing fractional work. Obviously, it's grown in scope over the years to now I head up all operations for marketing, comms, UX. But initially, I was just doing small administration tasks.
All right, I want to go back to those small admin tasks when you were thinking that you're just doing part-time kind of work. Um, was it based on you just doing 4 hour here, 5 hour there, or 1 day here? Was it like that, or was it like a defined scope what you worked on?
Generally, it was day rate
Day rate.
and or hourly or day rate depending on what the business needed. I think one of my earliest contracts was going back to an organization I had worked for and using my advanced product knowledge from the years of experience to augment the team. So they had been through a merger, they had a massive product database, they had staff that didn't necessarily know what product codes were, and they were paying to use my brain and experience and pull it back to basically get through a bulk of work quickly. And then after that, I ended up a lecturer. So,
Okay.
so I was lecturing for a local university, and that came through friends. You have time during the day.
Yeah, it's always like this, isn't it? I feel, and many people I've actually spoken to, I found hardly any person who actually deliberately decided to get into fractional work. We all kind of got into it because somebody asked us to do it. Somebody said, "Hey, can I pick your brain? Do you have a few hours to work here or days to work on this project?" That's how I got started as well, pretty much the same way as well, right? So there wasn't any sort of intention that hey, I want to work on this new thing, I want to have a model behind it. Nothing at all. We just kind of got started in this journey, and I feel most people I speak to kind of have the similar experience. They kind of get into it, right? So and then they kind of figure that out along the way how to make it a bit better, like operationally, right? How do you explain to other people what do you do?
I usually say I'm a consultant who goes in and
Yeah.
advocates for the customer journey. I have a systems thinking brain, and I don't just sit there. They'll be saying, "Hey, we're doing all this marketing, but we're not getting the leads," and I'll sit there going, "Have you actually sat in your customer's chair and looked at what they experience from your business?" And so one of the organizations I went in for a year, their product documentation was really, really fragmented and there were no rules around that. And so it was actually hard for their customer service to read their own manuals. So imagine the customer's
Wow.
experience. So when I
Yeah.
interviewed in that business, I went, "Your customer service staff who work here every day don't know how to answer a question without going to your tech staff. So a customer's got no hope."
Oh, yeah.
And
How they can do it. Yeah.
so I ended up with that business for a year initially, but ended up there for 3 years. Ended up doing 150 product manuals, completely redesigned, multiple acquisitions because they were like, "Now we need you for the next thing, the next thing, the next thing." I ended up doing product packaging, rebranding. I think we did 8 websites, building them a marketing team. And then
Wow.
when they got to BAU, I went, "Okay, now I'm bored." and I went off to do the next project. They were a bit shocked that I was like, you've got a great team. They can handle it. They know what they're doing. They've been trained. You've got a staff member who can come back into marketing manager role. I'm off, and I went on to the next fractional. So for me, also part of it is making really big changes to business and competitive advantage. I don't love BAU. There's great people who do that, but I actually love working with the senior management team and thinking through more dynamics than just your social media or just your billboards. So go into that UX of the tech
Yeah.
and the end-to-end journey.
So yeah, that's a good thing too. So would love to understand, what is a good fractional engagement look like for you?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And it's sometimes really hard when scoping a client to actually work that out, because sometimes the person that you're actually interviewing doesn't actually know what they're doing or doesn't actually
True.
know what their tools are. And so a really great one is where they're going to take your advice and action it when they're serious about changing their business. Sometimes they want the results, but they're not really on board with the journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the I think the challenging part is if they have a bigger leadership team as well, that one person want this way and other five kind of push you the other way, and it's really hard to bring them together. And I found this challenging as well early on when you go there and have that initial conversation. CEO or the founder is all up for it and he want to make the big leap and do all the big things, but other people are kind of pulling back, or not pulling back, but also have concerns which hasn't been addressed in the way they wanted to be addressed. Have you found that way as well, like where the leadership is
Yeah.
kind of, not listening, or you have to sort of get in there and explain or walk them through?
Yeah, I mean, in the example I was given with the organization, the tech team, when I came back and said, hey, we need to standardize your product manuals. And they'd been doing them for the last 10 years. And so the defensiveness, and I think it took 3 months. They were dragging their tail and giving the material we needed. They weren't on board with this concept. The way I've done it's perfect. You know, I like talking to customers, so I don't want to change. And so they don't trust you because you're a new person. You don't
True.
have that
That's right.
respect established. Who brought you into the business, and the politics around that person's trust can have a lot of impact on your experience.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about your practice now. And I'd love to understand, how do you approach that? Acquiring new customers for your business. Like, how does that happen? How does the funnel work in your own business?
At the moment for mine, it's word of mouth. I haven't really needed to go out and seek more work. I actually have enough. Occasionally, if I see an interesting project through friends, I'll say, hey, I'm up for that. I'm open to new opportunities and I'll have a discussion. But thankfully, in my case, I work for my own pleasure. So as things come across my desk, if I think I can help, I will put my hand up. And if I don't believe it's going to work, I'll pass. Or I'll refer them on to someone else with the right skill set. So I've got some old staff members who take fractional work. If someone recently came to me with a pure social media, and I went, you need to speak to my very good friend Taylor. That's all she does. If you don't want more than that, don't pay for me and her. And so, yeah, for myself, I haven't had to go out much further. It usually comes to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good problem. I mean, a good way of running a practice, right? So somebody just come and knock on your door. If you ever have to do it, and I'm God forbid you have to do a knock on the door, do you have a preferred method? How would you approach that if you ever
I
have to think about it?
I have actually gone out through some consultants. So sometimes I've worked for a few agencies over the years and contacted a few that I've worked with previously, because some of the organizations have required contracting through a talent agent.
Yeah.
So I've got a few relationships there, and I'll contact them and say, hey, I'm available, I'd like work. And I've worked with about three or four over the years because, particularly if you take a contract in with government. So I've been approached by people I've worked with in government, and then when it comes to actually working with them, it goes through one of these talent agents. And so I can often ring up that recruiting agent and say, hey, remember we worked with each other on this? I've got some capacity. So that's worked for me as well. I haven't
Yeah.
actually had to do LinkedIn marketing or anything for myself as yet,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I've got the.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I think that's a good way to run a practice. Most of the people I've spoken to, and that's, I would say, in 2025, number one problem, or at least right at the top, has always been people messaging and asking, hey, how do we acquire more clients? Or how do we speak to the people or the CEOs? How do I actually get my practice going? And that's been most challenging for a lot of people. And client acquisition is the biggest one. And yeah, that's why I'm always kind of interested to understand that what are you doing differently, what people are doing differently, just so that they can. I mean, let me ask you, because you're in marketing, right? So in
Yes.
that space, how does, like, if you have to suggest something for the people who are kind of in that space, they're not getting it, they are experienced, they have 15, 20 years experience. Now they kind of say, hey, I want to just do my own, start a fractional practice and have a couple of clients. What do you reckon the best approach would
In my network of
be? Yeah.
consultants, we actually ring each other and say we're available.
All right. So
Who's got,
internally,
yeah, and that can be, find your previous, as I said, I've got staff who now run their own, ex-staff who now run their own fractional practices. And because they maintained a great relationship with me, I can ring them and they will work with me again. One of my clients at the moment is a ex-colleague, ex-client, ex we've worked together in multiple organizations. I think this is the fourth company we've worked with. And so reaching out to your network, but also when you want, thinking that this might be the direction, really being cautious about how you treat people that you work
yeah,
with.
that's a
Don't
good
burn those
point.
bridges. Like, leave
That's
on
a very
great
good point.
terms. Yeah. So that's why I've always left on very, very good terms with people, having an open conversation about, you know, hey, I've done all I can. I'm expensive. I can put a team in and go. Please call me back if you want more. But I'm at the point where you can save money by getting rid of me and I can go and do something more interesting, which most founders and CEOs are very taken aback by.
Yeah, that's a very good point. True. True. I agree with that actually. Yeah, because
Mm,
most people, yeah, I think most people, they kind of struggle alone. They don't go out and speak to their network. They don't even, I mean, they might speak to one or two people, but this is a really good point you mentioned, that hey, go and speak to the people you have worked in the past. You have worked for 15, 20 years, and you have that, you might not think that you know anybody or people forgot, but people remember it. Just it's worth, just going and messaging on LinkedIn, picking
mm,
up a phone
yes.
the old fashioned way, and just calling people and saying, hey, this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And one of my, actually, the person I'm working with at the working for at the moment, one of my projects, some years back, he actually put out on LinkedIn through just messages to his network, hey, I'm looking for work. And I messaged back and said, actually, our GM was fired this morning and my CEO is looking for someone and he does management. So a month later, he was actually my general manager. So
That's really
you never
awesome. Yeah.
know. Somebody in your network may have just the right position at the perfect timing for you.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good point. It's really worth, instead of, I'd always say to people, most people, what they do is they kind of feel that they're alone. They started something, this is a brand new, and they started, LinkedIn messaging or some sort of paid marketing as well, without kind of going back and tapping on their existing network and speaking to them. And I feel that That's the biggest thing for us, people in our space, that we need to make sure that we go back and don't lose that connection. Like it took 15, 20 years to build that. For some people, people remember that. So it's a good idea to just go and talk to those people.
And I think to come in as a consultant or a fractional worker, there's a level of trust that's required. If they're going to take your advice, if you walk in and you have an established relationship, you already have that actually builds a good relationship and good project, because they're going to follow your advice because they have experience with your work and they
Yes.
understand your communication style, your intent, your integrity, and that's why they seek you. So I think also acting with integrity in your dealings more broadly and being known for that makes you more desirable within a fractional space.
Yeah, true. Absolutely. Look, thank you for sharing that, because this is something I want to say to everybody as well who are in this space and they're struggling. Don't try to put in any sort of marketing hat on and run sort of campaigns. It'll be a good idea to just go back and speak to the people you have worked with, and that helps, and that helps all of us. Like in my space as well, most of my work comes from referral at the moment as well. I didn't have to run any sort of paid ads or anything like in that world. That's good. Let's talk about your sales process. How does that happen? I know most of the work come from that, but how do you actually do it? Do you do proposals? Do you actually do a pitch packs? How does that work in your world?
I haven't had to actually. I
Really?
usually have a coffee and a chat and talk about what they want to do. Because I've generally worked with friends, my pitch pack is my previous work.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so
So
they know
yeah.
what I've done with them before. Um, I do have a website, of course, which has a portfolio of things that I've done. I will refer them to them. I'm not big on the pitch pack because I believe your pitch pack could be used for them to go to Fiverr or somebody else, you know, in a cheaper labor environment and say, hey, they've given me a website draft. Can you now enact it? Which might be great, but did you get paid for that? So I don't deliver any of that until I'm actually on board.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's easy, right? So
Mm.
basically, so that sort of leads to pricing structure. How how's the pricing structure works in your practice right now?
Currently, I've been doing day rate with my current clients with an open end of weekend. In my case, because I'm very flexible financially, I'm reasonably comfortable myself. Um, they can end that at any point. So, hey, you
Okay.
want some strategy and direction on this? So one of my recent clients, I walked in and gave them a strategy on day one, and I'll be upfront. I used AI to lay that out for me very quickly. So make my notes, recorded some meetings, put a strategy together, delivered that to the CEO. Would you like to proceed? Yes. Keep coming back in. Then I gave them a new website redesign. Would you like to proceed? And at any point, they could take that, action it with their own team, action it with their third parties. I'm fine with that because, I start with the helicopter and then
Yeah.
I'll keep going down in layers until they think they've got it and then move on.
Did you have to stay? I know I'm sort of going from pricing structure to something else, because love to understand, because you mentioned that it's sort of day rates and you don't have any contracts in place for 6 months or 12 months, right? How does that work? Did you ever have to stay home that you don't actually have a work at all?
Well, as I said, I'm kind of only working part-time at the moment because
Okay.
I've got a few side projects and passion projects that I'm doing. So
Okay.
I'm only supplementing my income. So to me, it doesn't matter whether I work or not. I
Yeah.
don't have my income's just extra play money. So I can afford to be casual. Earlier in my practice, when income was, very required, I usually worked on a 6 to 12 months, but then they were more embedded roles rather than what I'm currently doing with very definite scope about what the deliverables were. I found the struggle with that was often creep. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's great when you're financially secure doing this because you don't get caught in role creep as much.
Yeah, this is the biggest trouble. I think we all kind of have felt it that you start with this much scope, and the moment you start working, it's just because you know and you understand it, it starts to sort of get bigger and bigger. How do you handle it? Like, do you
And
have any
that's
special way to? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I think why I'm actually sitting in my current process where I come in and I deliver something each day I deliver something at the end of the day. I've been making it very
Very easy.
easy for me to
Yeah.
deliver a sort of presentation or a report of where we're up to and email that back through and they can take that and run and I don't get caught in scope because I've delivered for that day. If you want the next piece, you're paying me for the next day. Or if they want to negotiate that I'm going to do everything in one of the scoping documents, then I'll sit there and put in place, well, that's going to be 10 days work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm kind of playing with that, I suppose, at the moment and seeing how I can change that dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing when you are in that space, and most people who are kind of running this as a full-time gig, working for multiple clients. The hardest thing for us has been is making sure that we stay in that lane. That that if we are delivering on this type of work, the scope stays as that. What we have done is, and just to sort of add to that is, we now have for our delivery work, for my work as well, I've actually done the work packaging. Means that for work I do, I actually created a work packages and I'd get people to say, hey, you want to buy this set of things. These are the deliverables, these are the assumptions, these are the exclusions. Those are the work packages kind of get delivered as part of my delivery, which clearly says that, hey, what activities I'm going to be doing and what's going to be included, what's going to be excluded. That's part of that, because when somebody comes and look at those, they can just pick and choose. Some people buy 5 work packages, some people buy 2 work packages. It all depends upon what they're buying, but it clearly sort of states that, and mine goes into the statement of work. Similar work packages copy paste into the statement of work and get them to sign it. That's been working really well for us so far. And I feel that before I had this delivery method in place, I was all over the place, to be honest. And the moment I get in there, the crepes was like people were asking me to do so much work and being a nice guy. And I'm like, all right, I'll just do this. I'll just do it. And one of those times were like, I felt I can do better than other people. That was the other big problem came in, that then I ended up doing more of, I think, most of the work. Yeah, but that's something I thought I'll let you know, that this is something I've struggled at for such a long period of time. When the language I used was, hey, I work as a consultant for a couple of days, and I didn't actually know how to run it like a practice. That
Mm,
have it as something which is owned by me but not delivered by me.
mm, mm.
Yeah, something. Yeah, it was pretty. I think biggest learning curve. But I want to ask your learning curve. You've been,
I was
you know.
Sorry, I was going to say that is one thing you're far more disciplined on than I am at this point, and probably a little bit more evolved on. So,
No, I think
yeah,
it's
kudos.
just a learning curve. To be honest, we started exactly that way. Like, um, I've only tried to put the solution in place because it was just happening way too many times.
Mm, mm.
And I'm like, I'm sick of it because I worked on the weekends and kids and families started to complain that, hey, you're always working. And then I had to say, I have to do something about it because otherwise I'll be doing this most of the time. And because I own the delivery, it's just going to be me doing the work. So, yeah, but
Yeah,
that's something I've learned the hard way. But yeah, I want to ask you, what's your learning look like? What did you learn doing so much work from last 15, 20 years? What are those, you know, learned lessons that you said, hey, made the biggest difference in, say, your life or your practice? Or, what are those lessons while you're working for that many people or that many
I
clients?
think
Sorry.
Yeah, I think you were just kind of hedging around that a little bit. First of all, being very disciplined about what you say yes to and what you sidestep, accepting that we're only in there to fix the problem that we agreed to, not to fix the entire business. It's not ours. We're
Yes.
not its senior management team. We are an advisor who's been brought in for a project. So discipline around that. And also deadlines, realistic deadlines. And within, I think you can get caught up in defining a deadline with a business owner or senior operator and without considering the dependencies. So if you're depending on their team and their team's resistant to your advice, how do you set that deadline? You're saying that their customer service
Yeah.
team is going to change their approach. That's corporate change. I'm, as soon as it's dependent on their team, I will defer to, I will deliver your plan by this deadline. But the operational change, I put that dependency back on the client.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I think, yeah, it's a big learning. Sometimes we need to sort of step back and say, hey, this is not my business. I want to make sure that I do my part and I do it really well, and the rest of the one has to be done by the other team because it's a team play, right? Not just we don't need to be the hero.
And I think maybe the analogy is a little bit like a fitness trainer. And if we actually remember, we're a little bit like the personal trainer at the gym, where we give them the plan, but we can't necessarily guarantee when they're going to get in shape. If they're not
True.
going to do the work across their business and lift the weights and rally the team, they're not going to get the results that we tell them is possible.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Love it. Absolutely love it. Do you use any techniques or any methods in your practice today to make sure the client stays? Anything about retention at all? Anything you have, any sort of
Hmm.
playbook?
No, I'm a realist. I sometimes will pull quicker than the client, which might sound really strange. I'll have an honest conversation and say, hey, your team needs a minute, or I am not seeing the work that we discussed that we would need for us to do the next step. So how about we hold off? I'm actually only going into their office every few weeks at the moment and doing things externally. So, hey, I haven't seen the work, so I don't think we're ready for that strategy day. And yeah, so I actually put that off with one client this week. I'm not going until
Oh, yeah.
next week. And that kind of is, I think, that financial security. If you're requiring financial security, what I've done in previous years is I've had that few days a week through a recruitment company at a company, and that pays my bills. And then I do this sort of practice work on the other days. I
Yeah,
don't
that's a good point.
necessarily make my practice if I have to pay the family's bill or the mortgage. I have more of a wage type job,
Yes.
and then I have this work because I don't think this work is something you get really caught up by the client if this is your only income source.
Yeah. Look, agree to that. Anywhere, and I feel that doesn't matter where we are. If you are struggling, financially, and you don't have funds coming in, that desperation shows up in every meeting. And I always say that desperation stings each time. If you are in a meeting, it stings so badly that people can smell it. So,
Yeah,
get your desperation sorted. Have something going on. Doesn't matter what you do, have that going on the side while you're building this practice or actually start to do the work. Work 1 day or 2 day, sell time for money, do all that if you can, but don't be a desperate because the desperation kind of shows up all the time. And
and
that's the hard part, right?
I think that, as you said, it can destroy your personal life because now you're
It
working
does.
weekends, you're doing so much more than you should do. You're under
Yeah.
financial pressure, so there's potentially arguments, and we don't need that. We
Yeah.
work to live, not live to work.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. Any sort of tools you use, at the moment? Love to understand 3 or 4 tools which made your life easy.
Yeah, so I've used Hostinger before to do really
Hosting.
quick Hostinger, which is
Oh
a
yeah.
website generator for
Oh yeah.
very small enterprises. So I've got a social enterprise at the moment. I've got something called the Living Project, which is helping NDIS participants do little side hustles. And so they only need a little website front, and something like Hosting is great for that. I
Hmm.
also love Lovable is really
Lovable.
good. Yeah, that's for more
What does that
complex
do? Lovable is
websites.
hosting as well?
It does,
Is it a
it
hosting?
does
Okay.
hosting, it does the hosting and the website and all of it. Lovable will generate your website just from prompts and you can actually edit it from prompts. So that's probably my newer favorite tool.
Good.
I like using Claude for copy.
Oh yeah.
I find Claude ChatGPT can do research better, and you can I've built some custom GPTs that will pull things in the sort of tone that I want. I use them all for different things. Some clients only like things done in Microsoft, and so then I'll use Microsoft tools.
Got it.
But yeah, so Copilot, if I'm working with that type of client, is obviously fantastic. What can kill you is getting the credits. And I have got so many tools that I use, and it's always the moment when you put someone in the spot, the brain just goes, what?
No, no, fair enough. Anything with the messaging to manage the customers, anything you use to message them, day-to-day messaging, you know, like a Slack or something like that. Do you ever used it? No?
My current client's using Teams and
Or Teams? Yeah.
what WhatsApp, believe it or not. I don't know why. Some of
WhatsApp. Okay. That's different
Yeah, yeah, I
for
know.
business.
That was
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah.
They have, yeah, I've found a lot of companies are starting to use that, especially if they're trying to get off the premium licensing of software. They're going to some of these other platforms.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Teams, Meet, Google Tools, yeah, it just depends on what the client. And Adobe, I still, as expensive as Adobe is in the marketing space, there's not much like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's pretty expensive unless you have a team of people. I find it takes a long time to learn it
Yeah,
unless
well,
you know. Yeah.
I learned it.
So
I learned it. So
what
for
did you?
me, yeah, and
Yeah.
I've got Canva and Canva's got some skills, but I tend to get frustrated and take it back to Adobe to do something.
Yeah, yeah. If you used Adobe, I don't think so. I think, graphic designer would ever go anywhere else because that's the best in the market. And I think it's just a learning curve because it's so good and you can do so much with that simple tool. I mean, it's not simple, but it's a tool which our guys, like when I ran the marketing agency, all of them pretty much use that. And they used to send me a copy of that, and I was like, what I'm going to do because I'm not going to be able to edit it. I don't even know how to do that. But anyway, yeah, that's part of it. Do you read books?
Yeah, I do read books, but after being an academic part-time for 15 years, I've read so many management textbooks that generally these days I read more comedy and
Okay.
humorous takes and human experience types of
Yeah,
things.
that's good.
So
That's good.
yeah,
Which one you recommend in that space,
I
like comedy, and which one are you reading or which one you liked recently? You said, hey, this is a good book.
the most recent one that I actually thought was a really interesting take because I like stepping into the sort of DI&E and understanding other experience was I read the Hannah Gadsby book and learning the inside of someone who's so marginalized, who's so funny, and also teaches you about neurodiversity. So she's, a Tasmanian lesbian and she's autistic and a comedian. And so very, very funny woman, very feminist. Obviously, she's had an interesting life, and that one had me laughing out loud. I was actually just audiobooking that while working on something, and people are going, "What are you laughing at?" And it was very,
Yeah,
very
what's the name of the
funny.
book? What's the name of the book?
I
Do you
can't
remember?
remember the actual title,
That's
Jack.
okay
You,
if you
you
can't.
just
Who
didn't
was the
warn
author
me.
again?
Hannah Gadsby. She's
Hannah
the
Gatsby. Okay.
Tasmanian comedian, and she's very, very funny, and done some very interesting. I've seen her at the Opera House, and then I
Oh,
heard
yeah,
she had a book, and I read that recently and had me laughing. Life's too short not to laugh.
absolutely. I think we should end at this. Life's just too short not to laugh, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look, I just want to say thank you for your time today, Beck. Really, really appreciate it. Love talking to you. It felt like just a coffee catch up, and I'm sure people who are listening would find this really useful. Before we go, if people need to reach you, contact you, how would they reach you? Do you have any URL?
Yep, my website is Rebecca, Rebecca Marlor, Marlor.com. So my name.com.
That's good. That is the best thing ever, right? So you should buy domain name based on your name. Definitely buy that. Claim that real
Yeah,
estate, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Beck. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Enjoy your week and looking forward to our next chat sometime in the future.
Okay, thanks so much for having me.